The Wolf Among Us 2 that fans thought was coming in 2023 no longer exists. The version with a completed script, film cinematics, and years of development behind it is gone. Instead, what we're getting is something entirely different. So today I wanted to take a look at that and what happened behind the scenes. How did this project change so dramatically, and why this new version of The Wolf Among Us 2 might actually be better than the one that we never got. Now, to understand why this sequel matters so much, we have to go back to 2013, because The Wolf Among Us might just be Telltale's best game. The premise was simple but incredibly effective. You play as Bigby Wolf, the legendary Big Bad Wolf, now serving as the sheriff of Fabletown, a hidden community where fairy tale characters live secretly among ordinary people in New York City. What followed, though, was a dark noir detective story thriller built around one of Telltale's strongest protagonists. You basically got to decide whether you were going to be the Big Bad Wolf that everyone remembered or everyone thought you still were, or you were going to try to be better and somewhat redeem yourself after years of tormenting others. By the end of The Wolf Among Us 1, Bigby had uncovered a huge criminal conspiracy that was destroying Fabletown from inside, and he was able to dismantle the Crooked Man's entire operation and restore some balance to Fabletown. However, the game's final scene left so many questions. This obviously meant, at least to me, that a season 2 was planned from the very beginning. However, things wouldn't go Telltale's way, and this scene here would never be explored.
You're not as bad as everyone says you are.
I need to tell you something.
I have to tell you something.
I feel like we've met before.
You're trying to place me. You like my ribbon? Do you like it?
Faith wore one too. Would hide her beauty so she could escape his kingdom.
They used to call me the Little
Did
Mermaid.
Dr. Swinehart ever get back to you about Faith?
He said he wanted to run more tests.
I hope you find what you're looking for.
So let's fast forward to 2017. The Wolf Among Us 2 would be officially announced during the San Diego Comic-Con. And at the time, Telltale was at the height of its popularity, with series like The Walking Dead, Batman, and Game of Thrones under its belt. And honestly, it seemed like they were just going to continue on this great roll after this announcement. However, tragedy would strike by 2018. The game was delayed, and only a few months later, Telltale would close. The studio would shut its doors completely. Employees were laid off, and The Wolf Among Us 2 would seemingly be cancelled, alongside anything else that they may have had in development. But only a few months later, in 2019, LCG Entertainment acquired the Telltale name and assets, bringing the studio back from the dead. At the Game Awards later that year, The Wolf Among Us 2 returned with a brand new announcement, giving fans hope that Bigby's story would finally continue. To help build the sequel, Telltale partnered with Ad Hoc Studio, a team founded by former Telltale developers. These developers were responsible for games like Dead, Tales of the Borderland, and the original The Wolf Among Us. So over the next few years, Ad Hoc would develop and write the game's story, as well as begin work on the gameplay and start working on the cinematics. And we would finally see a beautiful, fully fleshed out trailer for The Wolf Among Us 2. Not only did we have this trailer, but we also got to hear interviews from the cast and the return to Fabletown. With all of this hype now built and with a brand new look at the game, Telltale decided to attach a 2023 release date. However, another delay would bring a premature end to Telltale and Ad Hoc's partnership due to the game moving its engine from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5. This somewhat technical decision would stall the project and leave Ad Hoc out in the cold. Now, according to some reports, Ad Hoc might, and this is a big might, have felt a bit frustrated about the creative control on the project, and they also had plans to get a little game they had on their minds for a while going. So this would cause their partnership to end. Once again, reports suggest that there was no drama and it was merely timing, and this would actually open up Ad Hoc to work on their debut title, the critically acclaimed Dispatch. Now, Telltale CEO Jamie O'Tilly had an interview with IGN just a few weeks ago, where he spoke about the relationship with Ad Hoc and the split from his point of view. This split happened due to the game being delayed a few years. He explained that because the engine transition would delay development for many years, it was only a practical business decision to let them go and do their own thing. He also explained that he is happy that Ad Hoc received so much acclaim for Dispatch, and he thinks that another game in the episodic genre will only improve things for everyone everyone. So all in all, it doesn't seem like the split was a fallout. But one more thing that I would like to address here is comments made by Nick Herman and Pierre Choret. These are the co-founders of Ad Hoc and the writers of the original Wolf Among Us. They sat down with Eurogamer for an interview in 2025 and said the following: "We wrote a season 2. We think it's better than season 1. And we were on season 1. And yeah, we're really proud of it. I don't know how much of our version of the script is going to make it into what they end up making." And this is him talking about The Wolf Among Us 2. "But if one day we're able to make the thing that we wrote and we're in the middle of directing, we think people would love. So, good luck." So basically they cleaned their hands off here, saying, you know what? We did write it, we were advancing on it, but now, since we left the project for a long time, they're doing something new. We don't know what has stayed there. We don't know if they're going to use the script or if they got a whole new script. Like, we don't know, right? Would we love to make what we wrote? Absolutely, but we don't know if we're ever going to get that chance. And so the CEO of Telltale responded to this directly in his interview with IGN, the one that I stated was a few weeks ago. He said the following: "Certainly, there's some pieces of it that are there," talking about the script. "But at the end of the day, when you do a complete reset, you have to reset with the creative leadership you have and how you're building the game. So it certainly isn't the same game as envisioned that was there. There are elements of it, but it's a different game. It's probably the best answer that I can give. There are people that have been working on this title from its inception consistently. So there is some continuity on the team, and it's very difficult to draw like a clean line. Oh, this is the Ad Hoc version. This is what was going on here. It was always a collaborative approach to how the content was being built." I definitely think that this is where some of the worry comes from some of the fans, and wondering if the game, which has gone through so many changes since it originally was brought to light, could still consist of a good story, a strong story, and make it stand out like the original did. I mean, honestly, The Wolf Among Us, in my opinion, is a masterpiece, and it is the best Telltale game that I've ever played. So following it up is something serious and something that I personally want to be treated with respect. Seeing these changes, I mean, it does scare me a bit, but I am hopeful that Telltale can deliver alongside their new partners in Trick Studios. So this brings us to like the main focus of the video. One of the most interesting things and overlooked subjects regarding The Wolf Among Us 2 is the 2022 trailer and the 2026 trailer. Both of those trailers feature Bigby Wolf. They feature a conspiracy at play, and they display the Oz gang as being a threat and violent criminals that Bigby is after. So to simplify this though, the 2022 trailer that we got is the Telltale and Ad Hoc version of the game. The 2026 trailer that we got is the Telltale and Trick Studios version of the game. And there's definitely some differences in both of those trailers. So to better understand this, let's look at this press release after the reveal of The Wolf Among Us 2 in 2022. Never played the original game? Here's the deal. Fairy tales are real, and they're living side by side with everyday people in New York City. Those fables, they still need to blend in and live among us. The big bad wolf is the sheriff, keeping folks in line. Snow White helps run things, and there's a whole gang of familiar fables that are just trying to get by in the Big Apple. Something that I noticed in this press release is that Bigby Wolf is the sheriff, and he was working a case for a few months. This led him to a confrontation against the Oz gang. This is what we got from the 2022 trailer. He would lose control and turn into the big bad wolf, and this would force Snow White to send Bigby to anger management. All the while, Snow was trying to settle into her new role in Fabletown. However, something would bring a Mundy, a New York PD detective, into the world of fables, and her name would be Detective Faye Lung. This was the version that was gonna release in 2023. This was the version of the 2022 trailer again. But with the new 2026 trailer, things changed a little bit. The new trailer revealed to us that Bigby is no longer sheriff. He has been framed for something serious enough to be removed from his position. He is now working as a private investigator, and he would be contacted by Detective Faye Long to help her solve a case involving a series of gruesome murders that reveal a much darker and larger conspiracy and drags the Mundy detective into the world of witches and wizards within Fabletown. Bigby in this story must decide what kind of person he wants to be and how much of himself needs to remain a monster to keep Fabletown safe. I like that hook. It's the 2026 one has a pretty good hook. It talks a lot about redemption, redeeming Bigby, having to battle yourself on the inside to say, I have to be the big bad wolf or I don't, or how much of it do I have to use? So that stuff does sound really cool. So obviously we could see that there are small, subtle direction changes or story shifts from 2022 trailer to 2026 trailer. So I think the overall premise and story of the characters will be somewhat similar, but some of the characters' motivations and places within the story may have changed quite a bit. I'm still very much excited about this, but one minor thing that honestly bummed me out was the fact that Bigby was now working as a private detective. I do hope that that's resolved by the end of the game. I mean, I'm sure it will be, and we get a rollback as sheriff because I love being sheriff, I'm not gonna lie. But overall, I think that the story is still in very good hands, and Jamie Otatili did describe the game as a true sequel, but he still avoided the infamous ending of the original Wolf Among Us, but he assured returning fans that they would be happy with how the original story is respected. I honestly do see differences here, and I think that the main point here was to talk to you guys about the differences from 2022 and the differences now in 2026, because basically, like in layman's terms, if we grab the 2026 story and the trailer that we got from the Summer Game Fest, that is basically the only look that we truly have at The Wolf Among Us 2. And from that point forward, that's all we could take. Everything that came before that we shouldn't even take into consideration. So I definitely thought that it was super important to break all of this down as clearly as we could, so we could actually understand and know what to expect from The Wolf Among Us 2 going forward, and basically not get lost in confusion like I kind of initially did when looking into it, because from what I can gather, the 2022 reveal trailer and the early press materials that were revealed then described a story that really isn't the active direction of the game anymore. Also, a lot of the older descriptions and breakdowns tied to the original reveal in 2022, you really can't find them as much. You gotta dig really deep, and all the new press material and all the new synopsis and story descriptions basically point to the new trailer that released in 2026. That is now the primary source of the story direction. So I think us being a little bit better aware of this helps kind of reset our expectations, so we're all kind of looking at the same version of the story instead of mixing two different interpretations of what season 2 might have originally been. So the 2022 trailer, that was with Ad Hoc's involvement. They are no longer here, they are done, they moved on, so we scratch that out completely. And now we have the 2026 trailer with Telltale and Trick Studios, and that is the main source and the story of The Wolf Among Us 2 going forward.